Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Robbie Chess. This is round 5 of my 2024 Doeberl Cup. I am on a 2 out of 4 score, so on a 50%, and I'm white in this round against Wenlin Yin. Let's see how I do in round 5 after my last round draw, easy draw. I was well rested and recovered, ready for another day. So started with e4 and we get a French defense. I played knight d2, which is called the Tarrasch defense. It allows my opponent to sort of attack in the center, but I feel like I get my pieces out. I've got 2 knights out already, so this is fine. This is a temporary pawn sacrifice. You can see I've given up 2 pawns for 1, but this pawn is weak and I should be able to get it back. Plus I have 3 pieces out against just a queen out, so even if I don't win the pawn back straight away, I do have some compensation in that I have quick development. I'm ready to castle, so it's worth giving up a pawn when you look at my pieces compared to my opponent's. So look at this position. So yeah, I'm down a pawn, but my development is way ahead. My opponent's going to have to spend some time catching up in development, and during that time when he's catching up is when I can try and win this pawn back. So it's developing his pieces. Now you can see that 3 pieces attack this pawn. And he just plays knight c6. If he tries to defend the pawn like this, which wastes another move, doesn't develop a piece, look, tactics already are in my favor. Knight, I can just take it, queen takes, and his queen's trapped. So you can see that holding onto the pawn is not advised. So my opponent tries to develop, he's developed this knight, now he's developing another knight. He's doing the right thing, he's trying to catch up in development and give the pawn back. So now material is even, and I feel like the opening's gone slightly in my favor. I'm not winning or anything, but I'm just ahead in development. I've castled, my opponent's still got 2 bishops on the back row, and he hasn't castled. It is his move though, so he's probably like 2 moves behind in development. If he could go bishop e7 and castle right now, we would both have 1 bishop on the back rank, and so we'd probably be even. So he's roughly 2 moves behind, which isn't too bad. So he exchanges pieces, which is fine by me. And then I decided to go for this, what I consider tricky move. It's not the main line. I must admit I ran out of opening theory up to here. So thought for a while and I thought I'll play a tricky move. So I'm threatening his queen. If his queen moves too far away, don't forget I've got this check and winning a rook. So he either has to swap queens and do something. So he swaps queens, which brings my rook into play. Again, look at my development. I've got pieces in good squares, knight, bishops are out, and my opponent still hasn't finished development. So he castles to stop the threat of knight c7 winning a rook. And I decided to play bishop here, targeting the pawn, developing with a gain of tempo. My knight's in a good position. Now if my opponent plays something like a6, looks like a pretty reasonable move to save the pawn. It's already over. Knight here, the rook can't come to a7 because of the bishop, and as soon as the rook moves over, bishop a7 traps the rook. So already he's got to be careful. This is what happens when you're behind in development. You've got to be careful. One mistake and you could be in trouble. So he plays the correct move, b6. This blocks my bishop, and he also gives himself a developing square for his bishop if he wants to down the long diagonal, which isn't so dangerous for me anymore because the queens are off. But yeah, you can see that this bishop's still stuck on its starting square and it's a bit hard to develop. This bishop's not really doing much, whereas my pieces are, this bishop's really positioned really nicely, controlling both sides of the board. This bishop could probably be improved, but the knight's at least in a good square. It's even looking to jump into d6, supported by the rook, and then get really established in his territory. So that's what I played, knight d6, bishop d7, and now I decided, I came up with a plan. So I've got this rook active, my bishop's trained in this way. At the moment those pawns form a good defensive barricade to my bishop, but I decided, look, I'm ahead in development, I don't want to give him time to get his rooks to the center, get his bishop out. So I decided to attack, which is in theory the right thing to do. So I played a4, coming up with a plan of going, this is what my plan was, a5, either, so let's just make a move. I'll show you my plan. So I was thinking to play a5, and then if he takes this way, now suddenly I've taken that, and he's got a weak pawn here. I can attack and probably most likely win. So that's no good. And if he doesn't take me, you can see both my knight and bishop guard the square, so he can't push the pawn. If he decides to say move his rook, for example, then my plan was to take, and then he's got a weak pawn here. So because he's threatening to push it, I'd probably first play something like knight up, and then with ideas of bringing the rook in, attacking the pawn, this rook's attacking the bishop, so the knight can't move. So yeah, I was trying to target the weakness. That was my plan, but I missed his tactic. He's got a tactic here. It's not game winning or anything, but it took me by surprise. I didn't even consider it. So this just shows that sometimes you get caught up in your own ideas and your own plans and thinking, oh, I'm ahead in development. I should attack now, and you forget to look at your opponent's ideas. Now my opponent played, after some thought, played this move. Bishop takes a4, after I just moved a4. And I was sitting at the board going, what the hell, this doesn't make sense. Giving up a piece. But then I realized it was a very clever move indeed, because this knight here, although it's in a good spot, is actually a strength and a weakness, because say if I had a pawn on e5 cementing the knight in, yeah, it's definitely a strength. But the only thing keeping this knight here is this rook. So my opponent came up with the idea of playing bishop takes a4, and now I've got some options. So if I take the bishop, you'll see what happens. That's what I played. But my other option is, and he then exploits the pin that this knight is against this rook once this rook's off the back rank. So he exploits that this rook's undefended, pins it and wins it back. So he ends up winning his piece back. What I could also try and do in this situation is sacrifice the knight. I'm going to lose the knight anyway. I realized once I took the bishop, he's going to play a rook over here, and he's going to pin the knight and win it. There's no way to really defend the knight. If I attack it with my bishop, he can just attack it again with his knight. So if I do something like that, eventually he's going to, there's no way I'm going to keep the piece. So clever resource by my opponent to come up with that idea. So on that basis, after I calmed down and realized actually that was a good move, on the other side, I calmed down and realized, well, I'm not actually behind, because he's won a pawn. And if I win a piece and he wins a piece, I'm a pawn down. But what I could do technically is I could give up this piece. I'm going to lose the piece anyway. So I was tempted by this line of giving up the piece. If he takes, obviously he wouldn't take with a rook, because then I can pin his rook to his king. But say, for example, king takes. In this case, I could take this back, and I've got two pieces, and 5 pawns each. So material's even. So I can always win my pawn back if I had to. But it doesn't always go like that. If he doesn't have to take the knight. I was then calculating lines like bishop takes pawn, threatening my rook, and then something like I'm going to lose the piece. If I try and sacrifice the knight with a check, he can take it, and his bishop's not attacked anymore. So I have to make a move like rook somewhere, maybe there, to attack the bishop. And then when he takes me and I take him, he's actually up a pawn. So I didn't like that line. I decided, I came up with a way of winning this pawn. So luckily this pressure on here, you'll see this is my original plan anyway. So I took the pawn. He went rook over here, which wins the knight. But this rook doesn't have to defend the knight anymore. The knight's lost. So now I came up with my own cunning plan of bringing my rook over and winning this pawn, which when he takes, you'll see that if he takes my rook, which he does, let's go ahead. He takes my rook. The only thing that saves me is that check is not checkmate. Looks like checkmate. My bishop can come back. So I had to calculate up to this point to know that my bishop will come back and I'm safe. And because he doesn't have a light squared bishop, he can't attack my light squared bishop and pin and win. So it's a very important detail in the position. So he made a very clever sacrifice. But in this case, it actually turned out okay for me. Even though I missed it, it turned out okay because now I have a weak pawn to attack. I actually have two bishops against the bishop and knight, which is a slight advantage. And you know, my kings can come out very easily, and he's got to waste a move defending his bishop, so he's got to bring his king across. And I have one weakness to attack, so I have a weakness in combination with the bishop pair, pawns on both sides of the board, slight advantage to me. So I felt like I was in a good position. The computer says I'm plus 1.2 in this position, so a pawn advantage, and that's about right. King over, and then I played the rook check, which my idea was to try and exchange rooks. I thought if he moves the rook back, I thought it's good to exchange some pieces, because the more pieces that get exchanged, especially rooks, then I can try and create a pass pawn on the queen side here, and then once my opponent, you know, runs over to try and defend that side, then I was going to look at something like attacking on this side. I was trying to split him, and because I had the bishops, I was trying to make that work. But so my opponent didn't want to exchange rooks. He played bishop back. So it's, you know, not the best move, but it defends the pawn. I came up with a, now it's tactics again. So I ended up playing king f1, slop any back crank mates, bring the king towards the center. It's always a good solid positional move. But I had to calculate bishop takes b6. And you may think that's a weird move, he can take it, but he can't take with a bishop. It's pinned to his king. Rook takes. So I've lost a piece, but I can go check. King comes up, and now he's got a threat of taking the rook, and he can win his piece back. I was trying to calculate rook here, take, and then trap the rook. And I got to hear him and thought, oh, this looks pretty good because his rook is trapped. All I have to do is spend 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. 4 moves, and the rook's going to have to give itself up for the bishop. So I like this position, thinking this is a really good position. Then I realized, hang on, let's say we tried to do this. It's his move first of all. He's got a move like knight to e4, and I'm not in time. And then knight here, knight to c5. Next move, that's coming. So, and the bishop doesn't really have, if I move the bishop away, he's going to win a pawn. So he actually is in time. I'm like way too slow to even get the king over. I'm like 2 moves behind. If I could get the king to c3 now, it would have been good, but I'm like just 2 moves off. Chess is a game of tempo. So I stopped that idea and played king f1. So now you think if I get the king to e2, say again like a nothing move, king e2, and he plays another nothing move. Now, if we look at the idea, this is what I was thinking. I start bringing the king over, knight e4, and then knight c5, and then I get there in time. So then I would be threatening to win the rook. So king f1, I had an idea, it didn't work, let's try and make it work. He brought his king over and my king up. Okay, so now I said I got my idea, but now he's unpinned his bishop, so it doesn't work. But you know, you got to try these things. Okay, knight to d5, and I came up with a check. I wanted to provoke him to sort of weaken his pawns a bit. His pawns are very well compact and defended. If I can bring them forward a bit, maybe the bishops can come in behind and attack. So I need to create some weaknesses. So f6, and then this is where I make a mistake. It's not a losing mistake or anything, but it's a no longer winning mistake, which, you know, half a point's half a point. So according to my analysis afterwards, I should try and keep a pair of rooks on and both bishops and bishop and knight on. That's the right material. When I have all these pieces on, it says I'm plus 1.2. I decided to exchange rooks because I thought if the rooks were swapped, it makes it easier for me to push my pawns. But looking at this position myself later, once the rooks get exchanged, the position is considered to be even. So that rook exchange, even though all the pawns are in the same positions, everything's the same, just the 2 rooks are missing, my whole advantage is gone. Which to me didn't make sense, because I'm like, again, I have 2 pawns against 1 on the queen side, I have the 2 bishops. I thought that those were my advantages. I didn't realize that those were only my advantages if the rooks were on. So that's, you know, chess is a mysterious game, but that's the only way I have an advantage, is when the rooks are on. So I need to do further work to explain exactly why, but that's too long for this video. So check, I swapped the rooks. And I decided from here, so let's get rid of these. I have an option. I can play on bishop d2, keep my 2 bishops, try and go for a win. But I don't know if I can. I guess, you know, king comes up, and he's got pawn moves up. I guess that's probably why the rooks were important, because when the rooks are on, his king was sort of too scared to come out. He could have got some nasty checks. So I guess his king's a lot more active than mine. It's already up on the 3rd rank. He's got a pawn coming up. A bishop's going to come behind, attacking my pawn. So I felt like he would get a lot of play now. So I thought for a while, and I thought, I could play on, or I could just take the knight, which I did. And taking the knight is pretty much agreeing that the position is drawn, because he takes this bishop, and now we have bishops of opposite colours. Bishops of opposite colours without rooks, in pawn endings where we've got even numbers of pawns, it's very hard to win unless it's an extreme circumstance. So he took my bishop here, offered me a draw. Thought about it for a while, and I was thinking like, well, what can I play for? Like, he's got a weak pawn here and a weak pawn here. So I started calculating moves like bishop here, threatening the pawn. He could play either a move like g6. But even if what do I do? Try and get my king over. He could just sit on a dark square, keep this pawn on a light square. If I, try to come up, he can always bring the bishop out, attack me. If I attack him, he's got defense. Or you could take my pawn. But like, you can see how these bishops just, they can't fight each other. They're always passing each other, and I don't really have any good pawn moves to try and open up his position. I could try, say we go back a few moves, the best I could probably try is, going for a queenside majority here. But again, just bringing the bishop out, bringing it to a good square, say here, attacking my pawn, say I probably want to have it on a light square, say I move something like that, and then you just say moves the bishop back and forth. What can I really do? I can't really push c5 because his king's in a good position. I can't get rid of his king. If I try and somehow, like, let's just make some silly moves. Like, say I try and get my bishop all the way around, to go in here, to go to there, to attack the pawn. By the time I do all that, say it's his move. So you just, say I go right to there. Look, he just goes king back. My bishop can't come here. My bishop's got to retreat, and then he just goes back there to stop me playing this. Or the other option would be to play bishop here to stop me playing this. As long as he stops me playing c5, there's no real way for me to break through. So again, another draw. I'm happy with the result. I was white, so I was trying to win, but I had a slight advantage. I couldn't capitalize on it. So something for me to get better at in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm now on 2.5 out of 5, so maintaining my 50% score, which I was very pleased with. Let's see how I go next time in round 6.